Dynasty players are rising in value over the last month. We'll talk about that in today's video. As always, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy Dynasty content. We put it out almost every single day during the week. About 80% of you that watch my videos are not subscribed, so just hit the subscribe button. It takes a little to no effort. Help us get to 1,100 subscribers. And also join our Discord. Link is in the description of the video. We have a little bit of a community going on there. You can propose and ask trade questions. You can get into our live streams, and you can do Dynasty rookie mock drafts with us, which we're going to be doing every single week, multiple times a week, up and through May. And also, we're going to start some listener leagues here. And we'd like to get you guys in on those. So today we're talking about Dynasty Risers. I put these videos out at the beginning of every single month. You're going to see a Dynasty Fallers video in tomorrow's video. But today we're talking about Risers, who has risen the most in value. Because, in Dynasty, one of the skills, especially during the offseason, is to just keep tabs on the market. Realize what the market's doing, how it's rising, how it's falling, so you can buy low and sell high. That's the name of the game when it comes to Dynasty. So starting off with quarterbacks, your new QB1 in Dynasty is Jayden Daniels, coming off that amazing rookie season where he set the single season rookie rushing yards. He ran for 850 yards. He won a couple games in the playoffs, looked really good. Even in that Philly game, Jayden Daniels was not the reason why they lost that game. And he's your new QB1, whether it's justified or not. That's what he is. I mean, I don't think you can argue that he is in the same tier. At the very least, he's in the same tier with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And, would I still take Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson over Jayden? Probably, but I'm also not going to argue with anyone that wants Jayden. I am curious to revisit this, though, in a year or even in the middle of the 2025 season to see if this, we could get a sophomore slump type of year from Jayden, just like we saw from CJ Stroud. For fantasy, I think it's less likely just because of his rushing ability, and that's never going to go away, at least, unless he gets injured. That's not going to go away anytime soon. So for fantasy, he's probably still going to be good, but maybe just the team regresses a little bit or the passing offense regresses a little bit. But seems like Cliff Kingsbury is going to stay, which is probably a good thing. Let me know in the comments if you think Jayden Daniels should be the QB1. Drake May has only moved up 10 spots, 2 spots. Generally, the QB market doesn't move much in that top 20, top 24, because it's quarterbacks and they're less volatile. But moving up 2 spots when you're already in the top 10 is pretty significant. I think people underrate Drake May just a little bit in terms of his season. Because if you look at the per game stuff, you go to Fantasy Pros and you just look at like points per game and things like that. It's not going to be as good as maybe Drake May played, just because you have a couple games in there. Week 3 he came in, he only threw 8 passes, played 30% of the snaps. That's included in his per game averages. Week 17 he came in, he played 1 snap basically, and attempted 1 pass and then was out for the rest of the game. That's affecting him. There's another game where he only threw 6 passes. So you have a few games in there that's affecting his per game average. But when Drake May, when he was playing, so I think it was 11 games where he basically played, excluding those first 2 that I said, he was averaging like 37 rushing yards per game. That's significant. That's not like, oh, that's a nice floor. You give me 2.5 points. That's like difference-making stuff. When you're averaging over 3.5 points on the ground, just imagine if you play in 4 point per passing touchdown, Drake May is basically giving you a touchdown extra per game with his legs. And that equates to over right around 650 total rushing yards for the season. That's difference-making stuff. 300 to 400 is nice. 500 plus is like, okay, like you're legit. I think that Drake May, there's a very good chance we fast forward in the year and he's in the top 5 Dynasty quarterbacks. If he takes the next step, they give him some weapons, he continues to run. What we're learning with fantasy is like, if you don't give us a good rushing floor, you're kind of just in this giant bucket of guys. Patrick Mahomes, maybe CJ Stroud's in there. Potentially Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, Michael Penix, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence. These guys are kind of in the same bucket that like they could have good years, they could have bad years because they do it mostly with their arms. And Drake May's kind of proving that he's not one of those quarterbacks. So I think sneakily he's like maybe even slightly lower than he should be. I just think he had a really good season, and we don't talk about it enough, which is how good Drake May was this season. So has moved up 2 spots though. I'm excited to see new coaching staff and hopefully they can bring some weapons in there, get someone like a Ted McMillan or Travis Hunter on that team. Last quarterback here is a big riser, Joe Milton, from QB 53 to QB 32. I guess I'm kind of like I'm in the idea of like whatever I can get for Joe Mixon, I'm probably just gonna take. Let's just see. Like I'm gonna type his name in on Keep Trade Cut right now because they do have like actual picks in there. They're basically saying that Joe Milton is worth looks like the 401, about the 401. If someone's going to give me a 3rd-round pick for Joe Milton for whatever reason in a super flex, I'm going to take it, even if it's like a late 3rd-round pick. I don't think he's going to turn out to be anything. I know he's fun because he has a big arm and he runs, and those 2 things are just fun to watch. And so that's just going to give him a boost. But is the team really going to commit to Joe Milton being their starting quarterback? Like maybe someone gives him a chance, but you would have to get a trade. He's definitely not going to be starting over Drake May. So they would have to trade him. I don't know. Again, if I can get a 3rd for him, I'm happy. I might even just take the 401 for him in this year's draft and be happy with it. But any 3rd you give me, no matter what the year is, I'm probably just going to take it because I don't think Joe Milton's going to turn out. I don't mind if you just say, you know what? It's the 4th-round pick. It's the 401. I'm just going to keep him and see what happens. That's fine. Very good chance that, this is the highest we'll ever see Joe Milton, unless he does come in and because someone gets injured like a Drake May. If he is a QB2, he definitely needs to be rostered. So if he's the QB2 for any team, he needs to be rostered. And obviously, if he's a starting quarterback. Into some running backs here. We have a group of guys, a group of pretty interesting guys, in my opinion. Travis Etienne, starting off with one of them. Travis Etienne, who I forgot to change the name from Joe Milton to Travis Etienne. Hopefully I didn't do that for the other guys. Anyways, obviously that says Joe Milton. That should say Travis Etienne. He's moved up from the RB29 to the RB25. I'm not 100% sure because this is, again, according to Keep Trade Cut over the last 28 days or so. So I'm not 100% sure if that's because of the Liam Cohen hiring. So basically that's not even, a week old or just barely a week old. I get it. I do get it. Like people looking at, well, look what he did with Bucky and Rachaad White. He's going to do the same thing with ETN and potentially Tank Bigsby. And there's a possibility for sure. And I think most people think that ETN's a pretty talented guy. I'm not 100% sure how talented he is. Like what we've seen basically is just like, we haven't seen him be super efficient. He was kind of efficient in 2022, where he averaged 5.1 yards per carry. But then since then, 3.8 and 3.7. Now, is that Jacksonville? Is that ETN? I don't know. That being said, Rachaad White's not very efficient. He was still good in Liam Cohen's offense. So I kind of get Travis Etienne being here. I might just sell him if I could, if someone's going to kind of overvalue him much more than the RB25, much more than a low-end RB2, because there's always the risk of, a running back, a new coach coming in and saying, especially in a running back rich draft, saying, you know what, I want a guy that I like. I want one of my guys. I want a guy that fits my system. And I don't think it's just a guarantee that ETN's going to fit Cohen's system. There's a chance, but I don't think it's just a lock it in guarantee. So, again, if someone's going to pay me more than like a low end RB2, I'll probably just take it and cash out on ETN. I'm not going to sell low on him right now. I think he's kind of fairly ranked given what we know he could be. Tajay Spears from RB38 to RB26. I don't completely understand this one. I guess this is still accounting for what he did to end the year. And Tajay Spears was pretty awesome to end the year. I guess the one thing that's positive about the Titans situation is I think they're one of the few teams that like doesn't bring in a running back because they paid Tony Pollard and they have a pretty good, 1B or RB2 in Tajay Spears. So I think there's a good chance, they kind of fill all the other holes that they need, offensive weapons at the tight end or wide receiver position, offensive line, defense, all that stuff. They don't really need to focus on running backs because they paid Pollard and have Spears. Now Spears did end the year, strongly. Like he wasn't like, holy crap, look at him. He ended the year with 92 total yards and a touchdown with 6 catches, 66 total yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches, and then 103 total yards. So a really good finish to his season, and I think that's what boosted him up. I still think Tony Pollard's the guy there, and they kind of showed their hand a little bit where, like, it was kind of Tony Pollard's backfield until he got beat up near the end of the season, and then they started to use Tajay Spears more. You look at Tony Pollard's snap share: 44%, 39% injured, 73%. So that injury, I think, kind of affected him. I know he was beat up before he even missed the game, but you look at like middle of the season: 89%, 82%, 86%, 74%, 94%. That was like Tony Pollard's snap share. It was kind of his backfield. And when they were winning, they went with Pollard. Now, I know Spears missed some games in there as well, which also makes it a little bit tricky. I don't know. I guess like best case scenario for me next year, if Tony Pollard's healthy, is that Tajay Spears is like the RB 26 or 24. Like he gives you RB2 value, and he's valued there right now. Like I'd much rather take the chance on ETN over Tajay Spears and a lot of other guys in this range. So I kind of feel like he's a sell high right now. Again, if someone's going to give me RB2 value for Tajay Spears, I'm probably just going to take it because the fact of the matter is it's been 2 years and we've seen 3 games from Tajay Spears in his career. So maybe a couple more. I forgot to make the graphic here, but J.K. Dobbins is also right in this range. J.K. Dobbins, I believe, is the RB27. J.K. Dobbins is a 100. Oh, he's the RB25, so he's over ETN and Spears. J.K. Dobbins is like 100%. I'm selling. He's moved up 11 spots, and I think that's because he came back from his injury. Surprisingly enough, J.K. Dobbins is still only just 26 years old. Like he literally just turned 26 years old. I'm selling high on J.K. Dobbins. Like he's 100%. I can see the argument for guys like ETN and Spears. Dobbins, I don't see the argument. I guess the argument is, well, he looked good coming off. He rushed for 1,000 yards coming off of an injury. And what is he going to do 2 years removed from that injury? He averaged, what did he average? 4.6 yards per attempt and stuff like that. I just think like he doesn't have a team for one. And it's a running back rich draft class. And I really think that playoff game with the Texans showed like the Chargers need someone more explosive in the backfield, in my opinion. And so I think they kind of move on from Dobbins or he's like their RB2, 1B guy. And so I'm probably going to sell high on Dobbins just because we don't really know where he's going to play. And it's a really, really good draft class for running backs. So he's definitely a guy that I'm selling high on. Jalen Wright on the opposite end. Now he's moved up 4 spots from the RB39 to the RB35. He is a buy low for me. He's a buy low for me. I was very surprised with the Dolphins this year that they didn't really use multiple backs. And that's just not what Mike McDaniel has done in his career. He comes from the San Francisco system, and San Francisco did the exact same thing until they got Christian McCaffrey. Now, maybe they think Achane is their Christian McCaffrey. Maybe they're getting desperate and, they need to win games. So they said, we need Achane out there. I think they go back more to a 2-back kind of system like they've been running, and it was Mostert and Achane and stuff like that. And I think Jalen Wright is the prime guy to be that player. Like, to me, he has like, when you look at the guys in this range, like this guy has like insane potential to just shoot up in value if he ever gets a chance and he looks good. Someone commented on the video because he was in a buy low video that I made, and they said, Jalen Wright in a zone scheme was just like deadly in college, and it just didn't really work for the Dolphins this year. He didn't get much opportunity, but he also didn't do a whole lot with it. Although he was pretty efficient with his carries. I'll say that, in some games, not a lot, but in some games. But I don't know. I just think there's a good chance that they move, and it's Achane and Jalen Wright. And if Jalen Wright is legit, then they're going to give him carries. They're not just going to keep a guy like that on the bench, whether they think Achane's better or not. So I definitely think Jalen Wright's like a buy low, and he could easily be an RB2 next year if things kind of fall into place. So I want to get him as like a tier down option. If I can tier down from like Dobbins to Wright and I get a second round pick, I'm happily doing that. If I can get Jalen Wright as kind of a throw in, I'm happily doing that. Into some wide receivers here. Devonta Smith has risen from just 21 to 18. Again, this time of year, there's not a whole lot of movement. But moving up 3 spots when you're already in the top 20 is significant. Devonta Smith is an interesting player, right? Like, I think we all agree this guy could easily be like a top 15, top 12 guy consistently if he's on the right team and he is the guy. If he's on the Chiefs and he's the main guy for the Chiefs. If he's the wide receiver 2 for the Bengals, if he's the wide receiver 1 for Buffalo, like we all agree, like this guy would be absolutely legit. The problem is he's a wide receiver 2, and he's on a team that just doesn't throw the ball or didn't throw the ball this last year. That being said, he was still, I believe, the wide receiver 17 in points per game, which is pretty insane considering I think Philly ran the ball like 65% of the time or 60% of the time or something. Jalen Hurts only threw for 2,900 yards, which is 900 and 800 less than the previous 2 years. Only threw 18 touchdown passes. Only threw the ball 361 times. That's pretty insane. And Devonta Smith was still productive. So I don't really have much to say besides like he's kind of appropriately ranked. We know his talent is good enough to be top 12 in my opinion. But we're the discount comes because of the offense that he's on. And, that's just the fact of the matter, right? He had 1 game of more than 6 catches from like October until the end of the year. So unfortunate, but obviously I think he's kind of appropriately ranked. Ladd McConkey from 14 to 10. My question to you guys is this Ladd McConkey's ceiling? Do we really think Ladd McConkey can get higher than this? I love Ladd McConkey. I mean, I'm kind of a Chargers fan. I've been less of a Chargers fan ever since they left San Diego, but so I like seeing him do well. I know people draw like the Cooper Kupp kind of comparisons and stuff like that, which I don't 100% buy because Cooper Kupp, man, is like a big, legit receiver. He's 6'2", 210, I believe. McConkey's a small dude. Which worries me. That's one worry I have about McConkey is like he plays over the middle a lot, and he's a small guy. And we did see him get hurt in college. We did see him he was beat up this year. I know he played most of the games, but he was beat up this year. Wasn't sure if he was going to play or not and stuff like that. How many did he miss? He missed only 1 game, but I feel like he was kind of like questionable on the injury report for several at the end of the year. Another thing that I'm not worried about necessarily, but I think it's going to hurt his value is I do think the Chargers are going to bring in a weapon, whether that's through free agency or through the draft, whether it's a tight end, another wide receiver, or multiple weapons potentially. And just the optics of that is going to knock McConkey down a little bit. Now, I think what we saw from McConkey is kind of what he's going to be. If he stays healthy, this is who McConkey is. An 80-catch guy, an 1,100-yard guy. I was a little bit surprised about the 7 touchdowns, but, to me, this is where he falls. Could he have like an outlier season where he does a little bit more? Sure. But I think he falls into this 80, 90 catch range, this 900 to 1,200 yard range, and, 6 to 8 touchdown range. I think that's where he falls. And which is really good, by the way. Like, you're going to be happy with that. I would guess most of the time that's closer to like a mid wide receiver 2 rather than a low end wide receiver 1, those numbers. I think this year he was a wide receiver 1 or in total points potentially, or he was in the top 13, I believe he was. It was a little bit of a down year for receivers, so keep that in mind. But I kind of feel like this is probably the ceiling for Ladd McConkey. And I don't mind selling high on him if you want to, or down tiering from him. Like if someone's going to offer me, for example, Rashee Rice and something on top, obviously, I'm going to take it. Roman Dunze plus something, I'm going to take it. A T. Higgins plus something, A.J. Brown plus something. This is guys who Ladd McConkey's ranked over several spots over. So I love the down tier thoughts of this range because there's a couple guys in there, specifically A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, and Dunze that I don't mind down tiering to, getting extra pieces, whether it's a first round pick, multiple seconds, whatever it is. And I think, any of those guys could be better than Ladd McConkey next year. So I'm curious what you guys think, if he's kind of at his peak in terms of value right now, or if he can go up. Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. And next up, we have Xavier Worthy. He was on the last Dynasty Risers video, which I try to avoid doing back-to-back months with the same guys. But Xavier Worthy from wide receiver 29 to wide receiver 22. And if you go back and listen to the videos I was putting out back in October and things like that, kind of telling people like, why is Xavier Worthy being ranked so low? I don't know. I didn't really understand it. Like, and I'll go back and double check where exactly he was back in like October, because he wasn't quite producing in October. Rashee Rice was hurt right around that time, and I think we expected maybe a little bit more from him. So yeah, basically middle of November, he was the wide receiver 39, which was kind of crazy but again, he wasn't really producing, but I think we were just docking him too much. Like we were expecting too much. We tend to do this. Like we need to be a little bit more patient, and he's been awesome since November 17th is when he started to go off. And I went back and looked. This includes playoff games as well. His 17-game pace, which is a nine games since November 17th, didn't include week 18 when they basically sat. He's on pace for 94 catches, 986 receiving yards, 142 rushing yards. So that's over 1,100 total yards, and 9 touchdowns. That's really good numbers there. That's Ladd McConkey numbers, right? Like legitimately, that's Ladd McConkey's like almost, better catches, about the same amount of yards, a couple more touchdowns. Worthy is a weapon. I know a lot of people are thinking because he ran a 4.21, even though that is awesome and he broke the record, I think that almost hurt him a little bit too, because then everyone just said, oh, he's one of those receivers. He's one of those burners. He's John Brown. Not John Brown. John Ross. He's just one of those burners, and he's not going to be consistent for fantasy. When I scouted him, and you can go back and listen to videos we put out in February of 2024, about a year ago now, saying like, I love Worthy. He was like right there with Brian Thomas for me. And obviously Brian Thomas is a better receiver, but and I thought he could win at all levels. He wasn't just this speed guy. He wasn't a gadget guy. And we kind of saw that play out. Like he's a legitimate receiver for them. And I know a lot of people are going to point to Rashee Rice and like, oh, what about Rashee Rice when he comes back? I don't think it's a coincidence that Worthy started to get better when Hopkins and Juju got there. A couple weeks into those guys getting there. I know Juju didn't really do much, but he's a professional receiver. Worthy, I think, is way better not being the main target of a defense, kind of being that second or third option on the defense, that the defense focuses in on. And so, what if like a couple of, I think the yardage is a little bit low for 94 catches. What if just a couple of those he gains 20, 30 more yards? And we know he's capable of that. And then we have a way different perspective of Xavier Worthy. So I still think he's like maybe even slightly lower than where he should be, that he could be even higher when we're talking about this, in the middle of the 2025 season. Last wide receiver here is Marvin Mims. I have him going from 65 to 51. Marvin Mims, did you know, and I wrote down the numbers here, Marvin Mims, and his 17-game pace from week 10 to week 18, his 17-game pace, 68 catches, which, isn't great, 950 yards and 13 touchdowns. He also was getting basically a carry a game. He didn't do much with those carries, but getting a carry a game, and if you get 10 to 15 yards per carry, as wide receivers can average at times, that's going to boost you up a little bit. But Marvin Mims, like, I was surprised when I saw this. 68 catches isn't anything to write home about, but 950 yards and 13 touchdowns. By the way, during that stretch, here was his snap share. This was his snap share during that stretch. What did I say? From week 10 onwards. 22%, 23%, 24%, 35%, 25%, 47, 47, 31. He did not go over 50% of the snaps at all. And if you average all that out, he's probably right around 30 to 35% of the snaps. What if he gets 60 to 70% of the snaps? Now, you can make the counter argument and basically say, well, Sean Payton's had him for 2 years now and is still not using him. And that's a fair argument. That is a fair argument. But I think he's kind of like, he's at the price where like you can buy him low and not be too worried. Like you're not going to tank your dynasty team because what you're investing in him. I think it's just a low risk, high reward type of investment. Maybe he's a bigger part of their plans for next year. He's kind of proven, and he kind of had a stretch in his rookie year where it's like, man, this guy per touch basis is awesome. Give him the ball more, and hopefully they do. Into some tight ends here. Isaiah Likely from 13 to 10. I don't know about this one. Like, I know Likely's very talented, but I don't think he does enough. He's kind of one of those tweener tight ends that we always talk about. Chigakonkwo, Jonnu Smith, Mike Gesicki. And I know those guys can have good seasons. They can have good years, but a team has to be willing to use them. The fact of the matter is, despite Likely having good games last year, he played more than 70% of the snaps twice last year. More than 70% of the snaps twice, because he just doesn't do everything that's asked of as a tight end, especially for a team that wants to run the ball, right? I don't think they're going to move on from Mark Andrews. I know there's speculation, but I think this team's kind of, with the Derrick Henry on their team and Lamar in his prime, they're in like a go all in type of mode, in my opinion. They got one more year probably of Henry. Go for it. I don't think they're just going to get rid of Andrews, who's been Lamar's favorite target over his career. So I think Likely is a sell high. I think people are overvaluing him, and I would tear down for sure, or kind of get what I can for Isaiah Likely, who, let me double check, actually. He's definitely going to be on the Ravens, right? I think he is. I'm just double checking, though. Yeah, he signed a 4-year contract, so he's still going to be on the Ravens one more year. Zach Ertz from 39 to 32. And this is interesting because it sounds like he wants to play again. And honestly, he was good last year. I think he was the tight end 7 in total points, tight end 10 in points per game. That's really good. And do we really see that going away for him? Maybe. He is getting older, right? He's 34 years old, just turned 34. But looking at who he's ranked around, like, man, I'll get Zach Ertz on my team and potentially have a starting tight end for the entire season. He's ranked around guys like Cade Stover, Noah Fant, Luke Schoonmaker, Juwan Johnson, AJ Barner, Dawson Knox. I don't think that the odds that any of those guys have a top 10 fantasy season, top 7 fantasy season are extremely low. So, like, please give me Zach Ertz on my team. I'll sell high on Isaiah Likely. Give me a first-round pick or whatever for Isaiah Likely. Toss me Zach Ertz, and I will be extremely happy and maybe have a better tight end next year. I think he's a little bit too low. I know we're kind of hedging our bets a little bit. Like, is he going to come back? Sounds like he wants to come back because he wants to play with Jaden Daniels. Last one here is AJ Barner, a guy that I just mentioned. I think he's an interesting one. He's moved up 3 spots. I believe, and I checked this before, and I'm just going to double check and confirm, Noah Fant is under contract with Seattle, but they could get out. Their potential out is this year. So they could save, looks like about $8 million in the cap if they cut Noah Fant, which sounds like is a pretty good option. Like $8 million is significant. If they don't cut Noah Fant, I think he's going to be like top 7 highest paid tight end. And does he really deserve that? Probably not. So there's a good chance they cut Noah Fant. And if they don't find anyone, maybe AJ Barner is their guy. Like, maybe he is, who, you know, AJ Barner, he has decent draft capital for a tight end, 4th round. He had a stretch there when Noah Fant missed a few games in the middle where he was at least getting targets, 7, 4, and 4. So 15 targets over a 3-game stretch. Didn't do much with them, but their last game of the year against the Rams, he had 5 for 34 and a touchdown. Like, I think AJ Barner could be a sneaky year 2 tight end that increases his value a lot, especially if Noah Fant's not there and he's kind of the main guy. It is a tight end deep kind of class, but you know, that doesn't mean the Seattle's going to target one. I'm sure if one falls to him, they'll get it. But you know, maybe it's AJ Barner. I don't mind taking that chance right now just because he's kind of dirt cheap. So that is it for the Dynasty Risers. Once again, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, guys. If you like the content, join our Discord. Appreciate everyone. We'll be back with the Dynasty Fallers video in the next one. Catch you all then.